Hey guys! So should you find yourself lucky enough to be playing the friendliest house in Westeros, Lannister, I wanted to go over their early game strategy, then I wanted to follow it up with what is their path to victory, and finally I wanted to go over a couple of key areas for them to defend. Now I intentionally saved Lannisters and Greyjoys for the last two videos in this series because they're the most complex. Because they're right beside each other, they either have the path of we are fighting or we are friends. To be friends with Greyjoy, you really want them to let you have River Run, and in exchange, they get the Sunset Sea and they can expand elsewhere. The Greyjoys have a leg up on you because they're in the highest up on the fiefdom track, which means they get +1 in one of their combats. And also, their house cards beat yours initially. So you really need to goad out a couple of their key house cards. I'll go over the house cards in a later video because I think the interactions between the house cards are really complex and really merit it. As the Lannisters, you're highest up on the King's Court, which gives you 3 special orders, whereas the Greyjoys have no special orders. Which means that the Greyjoys cannot get more reinforcements unless a mustering card comes up during the Westeros phase. So for the first turn, I'm going to try to leverage the advantage we have in order to get more troops by mustering in Lannisport. I'm going to hope that River Run is given to me by the Greyjoys, and I can just simply move from the Stony Sept into River Run. The Golden Sound is going to provide support. The reason being is because this is a canary in the coal mine. There's no reason to be concerned about a support in Golden Sound if you and Greyjoy are friends. Finally, I prefer to do a move from Lannisport out to the Golden Sound. And we'll go ahead and hit play on here and see what happens. So in this case, I really see this raid order here, and it kind of signals to me that there's a possibility that they're going to be attacking. Now, when I replace the tokens here, there's a couple of risks. If you see a move order in this ship and a move order on this ship, they're probably going for the Golden Sound, and I would for sure replace this order here with a +2 defense. You cannot lose the Golden Sound to the Greyjoys. So in this case, I'm just going to take a look at the Wildling deck, and I'm going to let them have River Run if they raid Golden Sound. So the Golden Sound ended up getting raided. As a delay, I can go ahead and move my ship out. Maybe, just maybe, they'll move from Pike and keep River Run open. Okay, so I'm not getting River Run, which is fine. I'm just going to take this 1 footman and take Harrenhal. That way I'll at least get 1 more unit if mustering shows up. So going back to mustering, I'm going to upgrade my footman to a siege engine. And then I'm going to put 1 ship out into the Golden Sound. I'd really like to provide more strategies into round 2, but it's so dependent upon the Westerosi cards. There's a very slim chance, depending on how the Westerosi cards come out, that you can play your highest march order. In this case, I didn't get the +1. And with that march order, move from the Golden Sound into the Sunset Sea, blocking a retreat, and then moving into Iron Man's Bay. If you manage to win that, that would force a retreat back into the port of Pike with his boats. And then you can move with Lannisport to take Pike. If you do that, you'll have Iron Man's Bay, his capital, and you'll pick yourself up 2 more ships. At that point, it's just a matter of mopping up the rest, and Greyjoy is basically eliminated from the game. With that said, if you don't think you can win the battle in Iron Man's Bay, the other option is to go into River Run, and what I would do there is play a +1 support in Harrenhal. Don't support from the Golden Sound, even though it would be great if you could. It could easily get raided by Greyjoys. If somehow the Greyjoys get plus some special orders, you may be able to switch this out with your Raven for a raid to get rid of a defense that shows up. But if he manages to get in this situation and muster, you're in a lot of trouble, and you really want to appeal to the other players on just how well the Greyjoy is doing at this point, and that you need their help to put him in his place. So in this case, I'm not seeing a raid token being used against my support, so I think I have a good chance of being friends with Greyjoys. You can either move the footman in first, forcing him to break the alliance, or you can move the ship in first. That would provide you 3 support from the Golden Sound, and making taking River Run much more difficult for them. It's certainly possible, they can easily do it. They would just have to use one of their stronger house cards in the process. I think me and Greyjoy are going to be the best of buds. So I'm just going to move my footman into River Run. I think all will be well. And let's just move our ship out. And for mustering, you can either upgrade to a siege engine and drop a ship, similar to our previous strategy, or you can put a ship into the Golden Sound and a ship in port to consolidate power. Now, similar with the previous avenue, it seems like we're in a bit of a friendly relationship with Greyjoys here. However, it's difficult to give advice at this point because there's so many different dynamics at play, especially with the Westeros cards. I still like my signature move, if you think you can pull it off, of taking Golden Sound move. In this case, it's unlikely because the March +1 order is gone. But if you could move from the Golden Sound to the Sunset Sea and take Iron Man's Bay, followed by an attack from Lannisport into Pike, that would be devastating for Greyjoys. You can throw that right out the window if mustering comes up, and it's pretty unlikely to do unless they lose the Valyrian Steel Sword as well. But it's not impossible. In this case, I don't think I can take Iron Man's Bay, so I would instead focus on, I could risk mustering in River Run, and perhaps support that from a raid order in the Golden Sound in case I see a raid from Iron Man's Bay, and then move from Lannisport out into the mainland. At this point, it's kind of like trying to explain chess and all of its strategies in a 10-minute video, so that's the best advice I can give you for this house. And the scenario where you're fighting Greyjoy, in my opinion, it becomes quite difficult, if not impossible, if he has mustering, unless you can get some other houses to help you out. But the most obvious path is to try to take the sea from him, which is an uphill battle. Ideally, you do it early when he doesn't have mustering, and then that'll give you support for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 castles in this small concentrated area. Then you can move 6 into Harrenhal pretty easily, and then from there it's just a matter of borrowing one other castle. You could perhaps move into Crackclaw Point for a turn to win. You could move into Moat Cailin, perhaps. Or you could even look at borrowing something from the Tyrells, or even jumping over to Starfall. Either way, that last castle would really stretch you thin, and it would have to be for the victory. But if you've already managed to capture this core area from Greyjoy, you've done a fantastic job, and you've probably sealed your win anyhow. In the case of a mustering from Greyjoy, I would really try to just take back River Run, and potentially expand out in this direction, against houses that are potentially weaker, and wait for the time to strike against Greyjoy as the opportunity presents itself. In the case of an alliance with Greyjoy, and I use that term loosely because you are really looking at a core of 1, 2, 3 castles here, and then I think you can safely push out and potentially even hold Crackclaw Point, King's Landing, and the Reach for 6. This is going to really depend on Baratheon being kicked down a bit. And depending on how the game plays out, if Greyjoy starts looking a little weak, you may want to double back and break that alliance with them in order to pick up these rich territories of castles in this area. Because even if you get all 3 of these and all 3 of these, you're going to have to stretch into at least 1 more or borrow 1 more castle. From that, you could grab Flint's Finger, but any option up here is going to require a serious backstab against Greyjoys. Taking Seaguard is another option, which may be a little easier to do since Greyjoys will tend to establish naval dominance. Alternatively, you could try to push really hard into the Tyrells, But I think any land castle obtained in this direction would be a bit exhausted at this point if you have these three and these three. I think High Garden and taking that would be too much of a stretch unless Tyrells have already been beaten down pretty bad. Moving on to key areas to defend. If you end up in a fight against Greyjoys, this is your core area. Support from Golden Sound is important to protect Lannisport and River Run. Taking the Sunset Sea is incredibly crucial because you don't want your support from Golden Sound being raided. Iron Man's Bay is another crucial area which provides support to the surrounding land. Taking that would provide similar effects to Golden Sound. It protects the core or opens up the core, depending on where you are. Unfortunately, you're also looking into getting into major sea battles with a pirate house. Moving on to if you and Greyjoys can be friends, I think some of the most important areas to defend are the Stony Sept and Blackwater. The reason being, the Stony Sept can provide support to Harrenhal, River Run, Lannisport, and to a lesser extent Sea Road marches, which you really just want this area in order to provide defense against raiding, so perhaps just plop one footman there as to not agitate the Tyrells too much. Blackwater is important because that can provide support to the Reach, King's Landing, and Crackclaw, which is your other three castles we're hoping to establish a strong foothold in. The problem with this strategy is that, on one hand, this direction, you're fighting a sea battle against a bunch of pirates. In this direction, you're pushing against the Tyrells and the Baratheons. So really, I think the recommended strategy for this house is going to be a blend of let's try to stave off the early invasion from Greyjoys, and then let's keep an eye on which houses are getting beaten down and be opportunistic. If the Tyrells and Baratheons are all fighting against, maybe Baratheons are fighting Starks, Tyrells are fighting Martells, that's a great chance for you to push into the land. If the Greyjoys end up fighting the Tyrells and the Starks, that's a great opportunity for you to backstab them and to push back into their core territories. More so than any other house, I think Lannister really just needs to establish that early game position and then look around the board and see who's not doing so well and where the opportunities lie. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope the more advanced players will give me a little leeway on this one. This is like trying to explain chess in a 10-15 minute video, so it's quite difficult to do. I hope this at least provides some advice to more of the beginner side of the players. And I hope at the very least you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.